let us ask the following question. Is it possible to improve the functioning of our democracies in the short term? The answer is yes, by improving the functioning of the electoral system they use, so that brightest and more enlightened political forces can more easily access power and help their citizens, and consequently all of humanity, to overcome the numerous growth crises that await us. Okay, but then how can we improve a democratic voting system? Well, a possibility is to use the representative power of negative numbers and move from a single vote system to towards a double vote system. Okay, this at first glance might seem as a useless complication, but it really is not. It's a natural evolution of the more traditional single vote system. But before explaining how it really works, let me say that the double vote system reveals all its importance only in situation of crisis, that is, when our democracies are put to the test. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are allergic to peanuts. For as long as nobody offers you peanuts, you certainly don't need to say no thanks, which is the equivalent of a negative vote. But of course, when this happens, then your ability to say no becomes absolutely essential, because peanuts are toxic to you and therefore represents a real danger. The same goes for a country's political election. For as long as there are no truly toxic political proposals, the possibility of casting a negative vote in addition to a positive one is not essential. But when it happens, the ability to defend oneself with a negative vote becomes truly fundamental. Okay, but how does a double vote work in practice? Well, it's simple. Voters simply cast, they will cast a positive vote in favor of the political force they want to support, to see elected, to form a government. But they can give, in addition, also negative votes against the political force they in no way wish to see elected. In other words, the positive vote is an opening towards what we want to support, and the negative vote, which is not mandatory, just possible, is a closing vote. It's a closing with respect to what you want to be protected from. So, okay, how is then the election result calculated with this double vote system? Well, exactly in the same way as in a single vote system. You just add up all the votes received. The difference is that in this case, you will have positive votes in the sum, which are the votes in favor, and also negative votes in the sum, which are the votes against. In other words, the electoral result of a political force will be given by the number of votes in favor minus the number of votes against received. Now, of course, this means that a political force can also obtain a negative electoral result. And in this case, of course, it will not receive any seats, regardless of the number of positive favorable votes obtained. In other words, in a double vote system, the negative votes count as much as the positive one. But let us get now to the heart of the matter. How would the double vote system be able to protect our democracies in crisis? You see, a democracy stops working properly, when the political debate starts losing rationality, when demagogy spreads, and politicians, in order to attract attention, to gain votes, they will give rise to increasingly polarized vision, trying to befriend one part of the population at the expenses of another part of the population. And we arrive in this way at a climate of increasingly sclerotic visions, as well as increased mistrust, which can even lead to hatred, and in the worst situation, of course, civil war. Now, the great advantage of the double vote system is its ability to diffuse at the roots this perverse mechanism of increasing of polarization and the consequent division in the population. In fact, a political force that tries to win the favor of, say, half of the population by antagonizing the other half of the population will obtain with this system an electoral result very close to zero, since the number of votes in favor it will receive will be comparable to the numbers of censorship votes it will receive. Therefore, it is very difficult for such a political force to gain power. On the other hand, the less confrontational political forces, by not applying the strategy of discord, will not receive or will receive very few negative votes. Therefore, while collecting, well, at least initially, a modest number maybe of votes in favor, they will still be able to obtain an interesting result and even compete certainly with those political forces that play on division instead of unity. But let me give a concrete example. Imagine a party that gets 10 million votes in favor, but since it's a very divisive party, it will also get 9.5 million of censorship votes. The electoral result will therefore be 10 million minus 9.5 million, that is 0.5 million. Now imagine a smaller party, which only gets 1 million of votes in favor, but since it's a much less divisive party, it will just collect, say, 0.1 votes of censorship. Therefore, the electoral result will be of 0.9 million, which is better than that of the bigger party that presented a divisive program. Okay, but at this point, maybe the natural question is why nobody has ever thought of using this double vote mechanism. Well, in electoral field, I would say we have fallen behind with respect to other field of human knowledge. Up to now, in fact, we only thought that we have only used natural positive number with just a little bit of rational positive number, the fractions, to calculate the proportion of the seats to be distributed, but nothing more than that. Until now, the representative power of negative number has not been thought to be useful in democracy. This is not the case in economics and finance. Well, the negative number have been used widely, to represent, say, situation of debt, overdraft, losses, and so on. And of course, the same applies to other fields, particularly science, where negative numbers are everywhere. In the electoral field, however, it has never been thought that it could be useful to represent disagreement in a clear and pragmatically effective way, giving voters a greater expressive and discriminatory power when voting. In a certain sense, if we use an accounting metaphor, when the parties compete in the election, they do so by showing just a portion of their balance sheet, the portion of the assets, while keeping hidden the part of the liabilities. But, if in a democratic system we want to use a more accurate picture of the different political parties participating in an election and competing with each other, then of course we need both numbers, the negative and the positive, in the same way that we need to see the positive and the negative entries in a balance sheets if we want to correctly assess the state of health of a company. Okay, now the question we might ask as a last question is, are our democracy ready to use this more accurate picture of the different political parties in a way that is effective during the elections? Of course, the double vote system I'm presenting here must first receive the attention of the electoral systems expert, which they need to analyze it, do simulation, test, work out complete analytical models and so on, so as to obtain an instrument, a tool, which is fully operational, ready to use, reliable, and so on. But, and this in fact is the main purpose of this video, and of the more in-depth article you will find in issue number 22 of the journal Autoricerca. I will put the description below the video, which is, by the way, an open access journal. So the purpose in essence is that of allowing this idea to circulate, be debated, studied, tested, and so on. Now, once this work is finished, nothing, however, of course, guarantees that the new voting system will be adopted. Indeed, it is not because a mechanism is more advanced that necessarily it will be adopted, used. It is entirely possible that it will not be taken into account precisely because it is more advanced. Because sometimes, well, in fact, often, we have to face the natural resistance to change. The double vote system represents, of course, a real threat for all those political forces that leverage division in their programs, which are very well aware that its introduction will deeply alter the political equilibrium, facilitating access to power to more mature individuals with real ability to create consensus. Politicians of a new kind capable of mediating between apparently conflicting demands, as for instance that of preserving the sovereignty of the parliaments of the various countries, which must legislate in an autonomous way for the good of the citizens they represent, and at the same time address effectively in larger international assemblies all those global problems that can only be addressed at the international level, such as, of course, pandemics, climate change, biodiversity loss, nuclear proliferation, poverty, and so on. Let me finish with a metaphor. You have surely heard of the Big Bang, what is hypothesized happened in the early stage of our physical universe. The universe we know with the life it contains, in fact, emerged from an immense electoral result precisely promoted through a double vote system. There were the matter votes, the positive one, and the antimatter votes, negative, which were negative. And something in the law of the universe, in its initial condition, kind of express a preference towards matter. So we can say that in a certain sense, our current universe is what emerged following that ancient mega-cosmic electoral ballot. Similarly, the general political election of a country are like a small Big Bang, which gives birth each time to a new parliament, which should ideally be the result of a balancing of the pre-existing discrepancies so as to remain only with the representation of the truly constructive forces present in a country. Thank you for listening, and please, if the idea of a double vote appeals to you, discuss it, make it known, and obviously one way to do so is also to share this video. Let me be clear, the double vote is not the only way to advance our democracies, but it represents certainly a concrete possibility worth to be explored and tested.